Hi everyone, this is Andrew Primer, Ukrainian American, reporting from Kiev. In today's podcast, week 189 of Russian invasion of Ukraine, and this is the third week of October 2025. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about the Russian hybrid war and what Kremlin wants to accomplish. The following outlines the primary aspect of Russia's hybrid warfare approach. Recent incidents include drone activity in Polish airspace, fighter jets in NATO territory, reports of election interference in Romania and Moldova, and the presence of unidentified personnel in Estonia. These represent some of the methods employed by Russia in the recent weeks. Such tactics encompass a range of measures from information operations, including propaganda and disinformation, to actions against critical infrastructure, such as undersea cables. There have also been instances involving drone affecting air traffic and cyber attacks targeting opponents of Russia. Other actions reported include alleged assassination attempts or defectors and dissidents in countries like the United Kingdom. Russia continues to pursue its interests in post Soviet regions, including the South Caucasus and Central Asia, while also seeking greater influence in regions such as Latin America and Africa. Europe remains a central area of focus for Russia's hybrid activities as the country aims to re-establish its influence reminiscent of the former Soviet sphere. The ongoing conflict involving Ukraine is a significant component of these efforts. Russia has articulated goals related to territorial changes, military limitations for Ukraine, and preventing Ukraine's future NATO membership. A conclusive outcome in Ukraine serves both political and strategic purposes for the Russian leadership, demonstrating Russia's capabilities and testing the responses of Western nations. So, one of the goals of Kremlin is weakening the West. In order to achieve its objectives in the conflict with Ukraine, the Kremlin seeks to undermine Western unity and resolve. As part of this strategy, Russia has intensified hybrid warfare activities targeting Kyiv's European allies, utilizing these measures with its broader military approach. Undermining Western cohesion is also an independent strategic aim for Moscow, as a robust European Union NATO alliance poses a significant barrier to Russia reassessing influence in Central and Eastern Europe. Europe's response to strengthening its defenses against Russian aggression has been measured. However, an assessment of key indicators suggests that Russia faces considerable challenges. The European Union economy is approximately 10 times greater than Russia's, and its population exceeds Russia's by more than threefold. European defense expenditure in 2024 approached $400 billion, representing a 19% increase from 2023 and accounting for 1.9% of member states' GDP. In comparison, Russia allocated 145 billion to defense, or 6.8% of its GDP, according to the data from the International Institute of Strategic Studies. When adjusting for purchasing power parity, Russian defense spending slightly surpasses that of the European Union. However, this advantage diminishes when factoring in non European Union NATO members such as the United Kingdom and Norway. To date, Russia has not succeeded in decisively outperforming the Ukrainian military on the battlefield. With continued transatlantic cooperation and increasing European support for Kiev, the situation is unlikely to shift significantly in the near future. Consequently, Russia has destroyed a wide array of hybrid warfare tactics aimed at European societies. These efforts are designed to erode confidence in victory introduce perceived obstacles to supporting Ukraine, and bolster political actors who promote pro Russian narratives, whether in governing roles in countries like Hungary and Slovakia or among opposition parties in Germany and elsewhere. Another goal is permanent martial law. From the Kremlin's perspective, the rationale appears straightforward. Employing the full range of hybrid warfare techniques serves to demonstrate Russia's capability and intent to impose considerable costs on Europe for its support of Ukraine. As European backing for Kiev diminishes, Russia may aim to either achieve a decisive victory over Ukraine on the battlefield or compel the country to accept significant concessions during negotiations. Either result would likely undermine Europe's credibility and morale, enabling Moscow to advance its agenda for reshaping the continent's security framework in alignment with its current emphasis on common security. Common security was one of the themes of Vladimir Putin's speech at the annual meeting of Russian and pro Russian foreign and security policy analysts. But this he simply means the primacy of Russian interests over those of its neighbors, in other words, the West's recognition of Russia's sphere of influence. But it would be a mistake to assume that the recognition of such a Russian sphere of influence would satisfy the Kremlin today any more than it might have satisfied Soviet rulers during the Cold War. On the contrary, Russian victory in Ukraine and beyond would likely encourage further expansion. So, the Valdai Club's 2025 annual report, written by some of Russia's leading foreign policy thinkers, is instructive. The report, titled Dr. Chaos, or How to Stop Fearing and Love Chaos, argues that the very purpose of war might have shifted from victory to maintaining the balance necessary for a period of relatively peaceful development. If this becomes a real policy, the hybrid warfare that the Kremlin has been waging against Europe for over a decade will become a permanent feature of Russia's relations with Europe. It is a vision that exposes the limitations of Russia's aspirations, the management of chaos, and the love of disorder, and the danger they pose to the rest of the world. So, Putin's confidence in the success of the war against Ukraine as a way to maintain his authoritarian rule isn't as solid as he tries to make it seem. The announcement of the Nobel Peace Prize on October 10 drew widespread international attention. Tensions were also felt in Moscow, where skepticism toward the Nobel Committee has been prevalent since the 2022 prize was awarded to the Russian Human Rights Center Memorial, which has been labeled as a foreign agent and forced to operate outside the country. Major Russian publications have eagerly speculated about the possibility of awarding the prize to US President Donald Trump. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that the Nobel Prize has lost its reputation, but he stated that Trump deserves it, a comment for which he received a thank you from the American leader. The official announcement of the award to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado was met with a complete indifference in Moscow. Although Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is considered a strategic partner of Russia, his support for the Kremlin's war against Ukraine had little value for Moscow. Similarly, the breakthrough in Indian hostilities in the Gaza Strip is being covered very superficially in the Russian media. Moscow has scaled back its efforts to improve relations with Hamas leadership, and after the near collapse of its key regional ally, the Bashar al Assad regime in Syria, Russia's interest in the Middle East has noticeably declined. Political and public attention in Russia remained completely focused on the war with Ukraine. According to the independent polls, support for ending the war is steadily increasing, especially among young people. So, according to the recent Levada Center poll, up to 80% of respondents said they would support a hypothetical decision to end hostilities within a week. However, Russia's top commander continues to show determination to end the war and remains unwilling to abandon maximum goals, despite growing discontent and increasing economic losses. On October 7 of this year, Putin celebrated his 73rd birthday with a meeting with the military leadership, where he directed the continuation of attacks on Ukraine, which his generals claim are exceptionally successful. But in reality, the small tactical gains Russia made in August and September slowed down in October. But Ukrainian forces reclaimed some territory in the Sumy region and launched several counterattacks in the Donbas region. Even highly patriotic Russian commentators have started to express doubts about the high costs and casualties of a prolonged war. There is increasing concern among the public about a potential new wave of mobilization. The main change in Russian tactics has been an increase in the intensity of combined drone and missile strikes on the wide array of civilian targets in Ukraine. Ukraine's gas infrastructure, which the Kremlin had previously avoided targeting in the air campaign due to the ongoing transit of Russian gas to Europe through Ukrainian territory, is now a priority target. However, Ukraine can respond symmetrically using its own drones to hit oil refineries as far away as Ufa, Bashkortostan, and oil depots in Feodosia, Crimea, where fires burned for 5 days last week. And let's not forget, Barkashtan and Ufa regions are over 1,500,000 or 1,500 kilometers away from Ukrainian border. So Ukrainian drones are capable of reaching targets of up to 2,000 kilometers or approximately 1,300 miles away. Repairing damages refineries is difficult due to sanctions, so Russia's only option to ease the fuel shortage is to stop exporting and importing diesel fuel with Belarus and China. Refineries are large, stationary targets, but Ukrainian drones must overcome Russian air defense systems to hit them. Here, timely intelligence from the United States becomes crucial. The supply of American BGM 109 Tomahawk cruise missiles, which was discussed between Donald Trump and President Zelensky during the fall calls on October 11 and 12, could significantly boost Ukrainian strike capabilities. When combined with extensive drone attacks, even a small number of Tomahawks can cause severe damage to Russian energy infrastructure and air bases. However, in the recent days, Donald Trump has refused to provide those missiles, blaming that we don't have enough of them or we don't want to provide the missiles for Ukraine to hit Russian objects. And also, as he claimed, Ukrainian forces will need at least 6 months to learn how to use Tomahawk cruise missiles, and Ukraine doesn't have time for that. If we have to do that, it has to be done by US forces, and Trump refused to do so. The prospect of such an escalation is causing serious concern in Moscow, prompting pro Kremlin commentators once again to insult Trump and revisit the idea of a tactical nuclear strike. On October 8, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov declared that the momentum for a peaceful settlement of the Ukraine issue has been exhausted. However, the Kremlin was quick to deny this. The very next day, Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov assured that the agreements allegedly made in the Alaska summit were still in effect. Putin confirmed that the spirit of entourage remains alive and spoke of Trump in very warm terms. Still, the Russian president seemed disappointed by Trump's restrained response to his initiative to preserve the strategic arms limits established by the SNO3 treaty, which expires in February 2026. In response, Putin announced rapid testing of new strategic weapon systems. Putin's confidence in the effectiveness of the war against Ukraine is a way to maintain his authoritarian rule, is not as firm as he tries to portray. The growing purges within the bureaucratic elite are just one sign of his increasing anxiety. Neither new sanctions nor trade tariffs can break his desire to subjugate Ukraine. But a new wave of Western support aimed at boosting Ukrainian resilience might make him consider compromise. In Putin's view, only the US president has enough authority to make a deal. Trump has both the economic and military leverage to negotiate an end to Russia's war against Ukraine, a process he is coordinating with Zelensky. But the Ukrainian president's signature line of defense, "I need ammunition, not evacuation," uttered in response to an American offer to evacuate him from Kiev early in the invasion, remains as relevant as ever. Thank you for listening. If you like my podcast, please share with your friends.